Hello everyone and welcome back to Code with Italians. Hopefully, today things don't crash. Who knows? Maybe they will, maybe they won't. It's okay. We're gonna try. We're gonna try really hard. Yes, I have reinstalled Windows. Fingers crossed. Yeah. Partly, yeah, partly. I think that the problem is no audio for Ivan. I do see you there though. So I do see you on the meters, so your audio should be going through. That's the opposite. That's the opposite. People figure it out. I can hear you. Yeah. Yeah, he's doing the OBS on his personal webcam thing. Okay. I I'm just double checking your volume and everything, but it should be fine. So, I don't know.
Anyway,
Okay, let's try now. Maybe I found out what the problem was. Let's try.
Can you hear me? Beautiful people, give me feedback. Can you hear me? It works now. Perfetto. Grazie, Paolo. Grazie.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I was saying, welcome back. Everything is working. It's working, I said.
Just knock on wood.
I don't know why. It reminds me of the talk I gave last week where things stop working at some point, but it's okay. Just pretend they are not working. They are working, and then go ahead. Okay, so today we're finally back with another duo, and today we're talking about text in Compose. So as a reminder, before we start doing we let our kind guests introduce themselves, but just as a reminder, Ivan will put in the chat the link to a Slido that you can use to ask questions. So if you have questions, please don't ask them in the chat because we might not see them, especially if a lot of people are writing. Just put them in the Slido, and then if you haven't asked questions but you want to see one of those already asked answered, go to the Slido and upvote them so we can prioritize. And that said, hello everyone. Hi Adam, welcome. So, folks, who wants to start introducing themselves? Halil? Zach?
Right then.
Okay.
I was just gonna delegate to Zach.
Okay, go for it.
Hi, I'm Zach. I've been working on Compose for just over a year, and when I started working on it, I was like, I want to work on text because that'll be really challenging, and I had no idea. So it's but I love it. It's really interesting, and it turns out that like text in a UI framework basically touches every other part of the framework, and so it's great. You get to work with like everyone on the team and look at all the different parts of the system, and it's really cool. So I've been doing that for about a year, and I've been doing Android for I don't know, about 8 years, I guess. So yeah, I guess that's it for me. Halil, who are you?
All right. Thanks. I'm Halil. I joined Android Text team around like 8 months ago, and I've been on the Compose project for that all time, and I've been focusing on text styling, text like drawing text on canvas and etc. Stuff like that. I worked on the brush project, draw text, the draw text and text measure. I'm gonna call them as the same single project. And also lately, like just this week, we also merged struct support for text style. And yeah, but I'm mostly in, like officially I'm in the Android text team, so it also counts the platform APIs. But for the time being, I'm working on Compose with Zach. Yeah, and I've been doing Android development professionally for 4 years now. But before that, of course, like for 2 or 3 years, I've done some hobby work, like just to learn. Like I had an Android phone, I just wanted to develop applications. That's how I started. Yeah,
So
that's all from me.
how many years before you get an iPhone?
It's getting there. It's getting there. I mean, it's the clock is ticking. It's like, because I want to try on the other side of the fence. They always start with that, and then they never see them again.
Hey! I've had an iPhone for like a year, and now I'm back to my Pixel. So there's that.
I'll say that using iOS definitely gives you a sense of urgency working on text, because there's a lot more features there, and it's like, oh wow, okay. A lot to do.
It's a good constant reminder. So before we get started talking about text, which is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, Ivan, do you want to do the event thing?
Yeah, so let's do the event thing. I want to start with a bit of just to remind the guests that if you have any link, you can drop it in the Twitch chat. You can drop it on Skype. We will drop it into the Twitch chat. And we have episode notes. So every link that you want to share is going to end in the description that we have in the video on YouTube. So we tend to not lose things. So feel free to just drop everything in the chat. From a PSA point of view, well, if you like my t-shirt, the invalidate and restart t-shirt, you can buy it on the store. You can also get our stickers on the store, because you can also get the invalidate and restart sticker, because why not? And of course you can have the pizza stickers and the YOLO driven development stickers. So we have a bunch of stuff, and we have also the pizza t-shirt on the store. Check out the merch that we have. And thank you for supporting the channel. So you can about that, you can support the channel with real money, but for free. So the idea is that Uncle Bezos is paying the bill. So that's the trick that we are using. You can connect your Twitch account if you have Amazon Prime to your Amazon Prime gaming account, and you can subscribe for free to one channel every month, and we get about 99 cents for every sub, right? But it's enough to, well, I mean, those rockets are not gonna go on Mars like for free. So but jokes aside, with one click, and we also have a couple of steps for the tutorial to show you how to connect it. You can support the stream, and we can keep printing stickers. And we also got new stuff that is coming. Well, it was supposed to come last month, but apparently production is slow for everything, also for our next piece of swag. And yeah, I mean, that's
the single tear going down my cheek now. It's like I just wanted that stuff so much.
Yeah, but we checked this week, and it was like the shipping window just got larger and larger, and that's supposed to be here at some point. But yeah, we have new stickers for DroidCon London, and we had a blast at DroidCon Turin last week. A lot of people, a lot of stickers. We got more stickers because we ended up giving away a lot of stickers at the conference. So yeah, so this is what we do. So thank you for supporting us. And you can also, Sebastian, can I do it? Can I do the Can
Go
I
for
do
it.
it? We're building a SaaS to help us with boring stuff. So today I build this. Subscribe. So is it gonna happen, Sebastiano? Is it gonna happen?
It should.
Okay, so brace. Subscribe.
Ha! There you go.
It's those small things.
Even needed this so much. It was like an hour ago. It's like, oh, please add this to the stream so I can show it. They're like, okay.
I'm 5 years old, but I live for this kind of stuff. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please, Ilker, nice try. I'm checking the user, man. Come on. I knew that somebody will just type the thing into the chat.
Of
Yes.
course.
Of course. Right? I was like, the moment that I deployed, I was like, I'm gonna need one more check on this thing. I know the people in the chat. So jokes aside, the thing is coming with our SaaS. We're gonna announce everything next week, hopefully. And yeah, if you're watching this on YouTube, thank you. Like, subscribe, and probably also wait for the word, because we are gonna run a giveaway later. So
Are we?
enough
Oh,
of
yeah.
this.
So, yeah, that's what we do.
So, gracias para soportar, ayudar el canal. Yeah,
El canal.
so
It
I'm
sounds
learning-
Venetian.
I don't know. I'm making this up. I'm learning Spanish, so you can basically redeem El Ivano on Twitch, and I am supposed to speak un poquito de español para 5 minutos. So that's it.
That always works so well.
I love it.
Okay. Ivan, stop hogging the attention. It's time to talk about text, and that's why I'm here. Text. So, who wants to start?
We could, I mean, I don't know. We could just kind of like, I guess, give an overview of some of the stuff we've been working on.
Absolutely. Should I open DAC, show something on DAC?
Halil, did you want to talk about maybe like some of the styling stuff or text measure?
Yeah, sure. I wanted to talk about text measure because I think it's going to take some time, and we already have some blog posts for styling. We can also refer to them if we have time at the end. But I'm going to send it over.
Thank you. Yeah, because if I start searching it...
Yeah, no problem.
It's going to get complicated. Okay, I got it, and I'm going to show it to the audience as well. Oops, I accidentally left the call. I have no idea how I did that, but I managed to. But I'm back, yay. Okay, so...
Skype screens?
Yeah, the problem was that apparently on Skype, when you have a... and I'm aware that there's a problem with Zach here, should be fixed. There you go. Okay, fine. Yeah, for some reason on Skype, if you press enter, it closes the call. I don't know. Anyway, text measure. We were saying.
Yeah, we hear about Focus problems all the time. So problem Focus was on disconnect. Yeah. All right, so if everyone can see it, like we wanted to talk about text measure today. I've worked on this project for like 2 months, I guess, but basically what we did with this project was to, we already had this thing called text delegate inside basic text, which is internal. And it was responsible for laying out text and caching that layout as well, if the parameters like the layout affecting attributes haven't changed. And the text measure is actually just making it public. And we wanted to do that because we were also working on draw text feature on the canvas. And these all tied up together, and we saw a great value in that. Like, let's introduce text measure separately from draw text, and we can also draw the text which comes from the text measure. And what it does is basically just like basic text. It gets the text arguments that we all are familiar with in Compose, like your annotated string or string, and also styling, max lines, overflow, and etc. Which all affect the layout, and it gives you a text layout result. That's it. And its only responsibility is that. But also there is one additional responsibility. It has an internal cache which can be skipped, or which can be like the size can be configured. And that cache is responsible, of course, for like if you send the same text arguments again and again on different frames, it gives you the text layout result without calculating it again and again. Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was gonna. So you said that was its only responsibility, but that just sounds like that's just text. What else is there? That's got to be all there is, right? What else would text have to do?
I mean, there are things that are like for the text stuff. There are things that you can do with it after the text layout is completed. But also, like, yeah.
Should we maybe like kind of? I feel like we jumped into the deep end a little bit. So should we like step back and like do a little like talk about just like all of the stuff that goes into the text when you have a text composable?
Oh yeah.
Like so.
Yeah, you get all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's actually like a lot of things that happen. So when you call the text composable and you pass in a string, it has to do, at the very least, we have to like read some composition locals to get the style information. We have to get things to load fonts and stuff like that. We have to measure the text at some point. So plug into the Compose layout system and figure out what the constraints are, measure the text to fit into that. We have to worry about intrinsic measurements so that if you're trying to, if you've used intrinsic measures in Compose typically for things like figuring out, how wide to make something that has like a list of text in it. We have to measure stuff to publish that information. We have to publish alignment lines. That's just all measuring the text. We also have to publish semantic information so that accessibility services and UI tests can see what the text is on the screen. We have to handle I'm missing some things, but after we measure it, we have to also there's also inline content, which allows you to put composables inside of text, and we have to like make sure that works and compose those and lay them out in the right places and make sure with all of this that invalidations work correctly. And then there's also selection, so you have to handle long press and drag, or maybe there's focus you have to manage as well, and draw the selection and make sure the handles work correctly and make sure that works when you're scrolling, and then you have to actually draw the text as well and make sure that everything gets actually put on the screen the way it's supposed to be. And then there's, even with styling information, you get styling from the text composable, you get styling from maybe composition locals. If you're using like a design system, like Material has its own kind of styling thing, and so you have to merge all of these style features, and styling is a whole other thing that Halil can talk about probably at length. It's color, but it's also like a bunch of different like font features and stuff like that, and so we have to merge all that in a way that makes sense. And there's like that's just text. I'm not even talking about text fields, and text is the simple one. And so we have to do that all in a way that's like, if you only want to like throw a button label on the screen, that should be super fast because you got a lot. It's a small bit of text, and it's everywhere in apps. So you have to do that fast, but then you also have to do all the other stuff and support all that other stuff and make that performant as well. But there's just a lot of considerations with text. And so, yeah, this text measure thing, when Halil is like, this is all it does is actually just do the text measure. There's like a whole bunch of other like UI features that it doesn't worry about. It just does the actual text measurement.
Yeah, exactly. And also, if people are familiar with static layouts, the whole Compose text stuff is actually kind of built on top of other than the UI framework stuff that Compose brings to text. Static layout is basically at the core of everything that we do in the Compose Text, because we create the layout using static layout in the platform, and also on desktop, I think they use Skia Paragraph for that, and static layout is for Android. And on top of that, we do all the other stuff that Zach just mentioned, like the selection. Selection is just like we put the static layout on the screen, and then we treat it like just like any other Compose layout, and do this selection and focus and etc. and like gesture handling on top of that. And static layout has all the information about how the text is laid out, like at which offset of like at which pixel, which characters bounds are, or like you can get the selection path. Let's say you try to select from first line to second line, it gives you the path, and then we take that path and draw it on the draw phase as well. Like I think there are just two things that we draw for the text composable at the draw phase, like the text itself, of course, and also the selection path. And these are all the things that like that goes under the hood, like and which is also text measure is also doing these things at the same time. And yeah,
I have a
want to say
question.
that,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So my question is, you said everything is relying on static layout under the hood. Does that mean that when you do editable text, you're not using dynamic layout, or are you using dynamic layout for that?
No, well, we use static layout and also boring layout, I think. In
Oh,
some
boring
cases.
layout. Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we don't use
Maybe
dynamic
worth
layout.
explaining what boring layout is, though. Let me see if it's, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I think it's basically, it only handles like a single
line, yeah.
And only left to right. So one other thing that I didn't talk about was, yeah, we also have to handle two layout direction cases. So you can, like in English, text is left to right. A lot of languages it's right to left, but you can also have, and Unicode lets you specify within a single string when that change, you can change direction. And so you can actually have like a string where like the middle of it is right to left and the rest of it is left to right. And if you're selecting, if you're moving the cursor, you're going to go like, you're going to start going from left to right, and then you're going to jump, and then you're going to go the other way, and then you're going to jump back. And so that makes selection really interesting, because you have to think about, okay, if you're just dragging a handle, because we also have to manage the selection handles. Like we don't use the any of the Android platform gesture handling or like input processing stuff for that. So like we create dialogues to show or pop-ups to show the selection handles, and we handle the drag gestures on those, and we map that back to the actual updating the selection. And so if you're dragging a handle along a string that has multiple different layout directions, it gets really interesting. And then there's also the case where the layout itself can be right to left. So with Compose, you can like Compose layout has the concept of layout direction as well. So if, like, for example, if you have a row and you're in left to right mode, you'll populate things left to right. If you're in right to left mode, it'll go backwards. And so there's like two different kind of sources of truth for layout direction when you're dealing with text: the Compose layout itself and then what's in the string. And so we also have to handle that. And in the very simple case where like kind of the we've made a set of assumptions that are kind of like the default assumptions, for better or for worse, but boring layout, left to right, single line, can do it a lot quicker. Anything more complicated than that, we go to static layout, which can handle all the rest of the cases. For editing, so editing text is a whole other thing. With editing, obviously you have to handle the soft keyboard, so IME. On Android, that's the first thing that comes to mind, but you also have to handle hardware keyboard key events, and you have to worry about focus and cursor position, and the text field itself is scrollable, and you have to worry about the text field being in a scrollable, which has been my life for longer than I'd like. And you have to worry about there's actually a whole different like way that selection works, and make sure that if you have a text field inside of some other selectable thing, the text field is like a separate like scope basically of selection. You have to handle more accessibility, more semantic stuff, so you can set the text. You have to worry about soft keyboards have the concept of a composition, which is unrelated to compose, but is used when you have languages that don't like basically directly map to like keys on the keyboard, and there's more complex input methods. So there's like, and then some languages also, in order to like render text correctly, you need to know context about the characters beside the ones you're actually trying to render. We have to worry about
like Arabic.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. You have to also worry about like text overflow and like ellipsizing and cutting off and hyphenation and stuff like that, like we talked about. And you have to worry about all of that in edit text or text fields as well. So
it's
there's
endless.
like, yeah, it really is. It really is endless. Like focus is like way more complicated than you might think it would be, especially since like how a text field works on like a TV, for example, if you're using like Google TV or Android TV or whatever it's called this week, how text fields and input and focus work on that might be different than how they work on a phone or how you use it with a keyboard and like tabbing around and stuff like that. So you have to think about all those different considerations. And then there's like styling a text field and so yeah. So back to your original question, we don't use dynamic layout because we try to share the text rendering part of it. We're trying to share as much of that as possible with text. So the process of getting text onto the screen ideally is going to go through very similar code paths in both cases, and then the text field just adds all the extra input handling and stuff on top of it. That doesn't happen. There's not as much share code right there now as we'd like, and that's something we're working on, is kind of refactoring a lot of this stuff to share more code and have fewer like special cases that we're handling. But I mean, there's no reason we couldn't potentially use dynamic layout in the future. But one other interesting thing that we have to do is, so in Compose, you have an annotated string. You're not dealing with like spannable or spanned string or whatever. And so, but that is but static layout, which we're looking at right now, only knows about the platform span string and stuff. So when we're passing strings to static layout, we have to like look at the annotated string, look at the compose spans that it has, convert those to Android spans before we pass it to static layout.
Because you need to convert it to a char sequence, right?
Yeah, well, so annotated string, the types here are really interesting. So this is kind of like I guess a pet peeve of mine in particular, but like string types on the JVM are a bit weird because there's only really, well, for non-mutable char sequences, there's only two. There's like char sequence and string, and char sequence is surprisingly limited. Like as an API, you can get the length and you can get individual characters, but it turns out it's pretty inefficient to sometimes work on individual characters if you're dealing with a large string. So Android has some additional, it has an additional interface that it defines called getChars, which has another method that makes it more efficient. And string has this, and there's actually like all the existing string types kind of all support more features, but the actual interfaces are pretty limited. So it's really hard to like express kind of like all the different things you can do with strings in an abstract way. And so static layout takes a char sequence, but it will handle that specially if it's like a spanned char sequence, and like the Android definition of that. And so, but that's an Android specific thing. So in Compose, we have kind of a simpler version of that. That's just it only allows like immutable kind of value types, really, like styles and strings that you can annotate stuff with. And then we have to convert that to actual Android spans in a separate string that we then pass to static layout. So annotated string is actually a char sequence, but static layout doesn't know anything about annotated strings. So we actually have to convert it to a different thing first. And we have to do that every time. Like if you're editing text, we have to do it every time you change something, which is something that we're also trying to improve a little bit. But yeah, it's all, there's a lot going on.
We also have the link that folks shared on the Skype chat that is also in the Twitch chat now, and this is how the magic happens.
Yeah, this is part of it, I'd say, but this is the core part. This is where we try to create the char sequence from the annotated string that we were given and pass it to static layout. But in between, there are lots of other things going on as well. Like before, static layout doesn't just take a char sequence; it also accepts a text paint, and kind of like 50% of the styling is done on that text paint. And but of course, for spans to work and etc., we need to convert all that into a char sequence. And sometimes for some different reasons, and maybe a bug in the platform or something that is specific to Compose that we need to address. For those reasons, we sometimes take a styling option from text paint and convert it into a span. Like this, I think what happened with text decoration was something similar to this. We used to do text decoration on the text paint directly, but then we realized there was a bug in the platform about the CJK text. So in Japanese, for whatever reason, I still couldn't figure out that because it was in the native code, I couldn't go and check the C++ code. But for some reason, underline was shown as a bolder than it's supposed to be. And if you just convert it into a span, just send any span that you want. It needs to be a metric affecting span. Even if it is empty, it doesn't matter. It fixes the problem because then the underlying platform code doesn't go to the native and does something completely different in the pipeline, and it fixes the problem. So those kind of things affect how we create the underlying static layout and also how we stylize it. For example, in paragraph and multi-paragraph, you'll see that we have a paint function which accepts color and shadow. And these are the things that we call draw style parameters, draw face parameters, because you can easily change them after the layout is complete because they only affect the draw face. But until recently, text decoration was one of them, and now it's kind of not anymore because of that bug fix and etc. Yeah, so these are the things that goes into creating the static layout for both text and the text field.
So when Halil says it's like when he's talking about like draw phase and stuff, we have to be really aware of the different phases of composition. I think there's a good doc there about that somewhere in the official docs that kind of describes this. But like just like in the view system, when you're showing stuff on the screen, it doesn't all happen at once. There's like different stages to the pipeline, and so you can with Compose you do all the composition first. You run all your composable functions, and then you do all the layout and measure everything, and then you figure out where to place everything that you've just measured, and then at the end you draw things that actually need to draw pixels. And so each of those phases can happen kind of independently. There's the doc. Yes. Here it says layout is one phase. It's kind of got two subphases though, because it does measure and placement as separate. And each of those four things, composition, measure, layout, and draw, can kind of happen or can be invalidated separately. So in the text case, if you're only changing the color of a part of a string via like a style span, then we don't need to we have to recompose because that's the only way to get that in there right now, which is kind of unfortunate. But it makes the API simpler. So we have to recompose. We don't have to relay out anything though, because nothing about how big the text is going to be or how much space the text has changed. So we can skip all that work. We don't have to place anything differently, so we can skip that. We just have to like redraw the part that changed. And so and text is especially sensitive to this because it is everywhere, and especially when you're editing, like it changes a lot, and we need to do that as efficiently as possible. And so we try to defer as much work as we can until we absolutely need it, so that when you're running your composable functions, we don't do a whole bunch of unnecessary work right away to measure all the text. Like we don't measure the text when you're running the text composable. We just record that's what the string is, and we're like, okay, well, we'll measure that later. And then when you do the measurement, that's when we actually do the work of like, okay, static layout, how big should this be? So the text, all the text has to be like really aware of these phases and make sure that we do things at the right time so that we can, try to be as performant as possible.
And Zach said that like right now, because how the composition is designed for the text composable, we cannot exactly skip the composition phase for the color animations. First of all, disclaimer, I'm not promoting this idea, but accidentally, when we introduced Brush API, we introduced a kind of a performant way to do text animation, but it's not a good idea to do that. But somehow there is a way right now, if I don't know if developers can find it, it uses Brush API with shader brush, and you can just skip through the animation, skip through the composition phase through that API. But again, I'm saying that I'm not promoting that because it's not a good way to solve that problem. And right now, because we are already using a cached text layout, when you do color animation, it's not that bad. Like it's okay, it's an okay performance. So yeah, there is a way, but just no.
I was just thinking in my head, it's like, oh, when we have the shaders episode, no, must resist.
No.
Bad dog, Sebastian. Bad dog.
Me? No. It's like, I'm sure if I mention this to Roman, he's gonna be like, oh yeah, let's do text. But yeah, I just wanted to relay something to you folks. I don't know if you're keeping an eye on the chat, but Ilker said, I like how these streams become Google developers therapy sessions in which we tap on their shoulders and tell them that we understand it all.
It's okay. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna
Halil,
be fine.
when you were describing the workaround to how you worked around the CJK and the line bugs, like that sounds like I work around platform bugs and just find a way in which, by pure coincidence, it doesn't do the thing that it's doing right now.
And make it to a library.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can still find the weird library I did like 10 years ago to support bidirectional text in Android 1.6.
Oh, nice.
That was not very good. But hey, it worked.
It worked.
And also, while Zach was talking about like there's left to right and right to left in composition, like in the layout from the compose perspective, and there's also left to right to left in text. The first issue that I actually got to fix was one about this. So somehow inline content was getting misplaced in right to left locals and right to left languages. So if you are using a right to left local like Arabic, and then your text is actually Arabic, like as it is, inline content was getting misplaced. And the simple solution was that like we were doing that relative placement twice. So it was actually being done in the text layout, and then we were doing it again on the composition. So we just needed to cancel one of those, and it got okay. Like, but so it's a good idea to use place relative in your layouts. But I think it was in the placement scope. I'm not good with the names of those, but like it's a good idea to use place relative. But if your placement offsets are already calculated, like with regards to that, like if they already knew it beforehand, you just need to use .place. That's all.
Yeah. One interesting thing, speaking about like kind of working around platform bugs or things we can't change. Something interesting about the text team specifically with Compose is that there's really no Compose text team. There's just like there's like the team that works on text on Android, and like half the people on that team focus mostly on Compose stuff. So the same team works on all the platform text stuff and all of the Compose text stuff. That split, like there's the same manager and everything, so it's like one team, but like, and the split is pretty clean most of the time, but it is all the same team. So like when there are really critical things, like if we, if something we really need to add to the platform, like that's the same team there. So theoretically, we could make platform changes as well, which is kind of cool, like easy to work together because we're all on the same team.
So you have also access to the elders of text on Android, I guess.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah.
Would that be Siamed or?
Yeah, one is Tiamat, and they also Seigo Noraka. Like he is one of the like most knowledgeable people in I'd say Google about text and stuff. So he has done many APIs in the like last 4 or 5. I'm not sure, but main releases and maybe even more before then. So I'm the ones that I'm not familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah, he knows everything. Like,
yeah.
this was long before I joined the team, but I've heard a story that like early on in the Compose days, he wrote the first iteration of the Compose text stack in like a weekend, and just like, here you go, and then you have text.
Okay.
Which is like just mind blowing.
Yeah, this is. Do you remember Romain? Oh yeah, you can build a rendering framework in like 2 hours, and then you spend 3 years to fix it. Yeah, that kind of vibe. It gave me that kind of vibe. What do you mean, like in a weekend? You know, that kind of stuff. Okay, sure. I mean, yeah, I walked the dog over the weekend.
Yes.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, you can say the same thing, right? Those are the vibes when you hear this kind of stuff. So, of course, the irony of me messing around with the webcam to show you Spike, and Spike just went off the couch. So, can we do questions?
Yes.
Sebastian, can we?
Let's do. Let's start from the first one, which is by the very non-anonymous Trollworthy. Hi, Mark.
So who's this guy?
Who knows?
A mysterious troll.
TextView.java on AOSP is almost 9,000 lines of code. Only? I thought it was more. Text is much more complex than many people realize. How have you approached that complexity in Compose?
You mind if I start with this one, Halil?
Yeah, sure.
So this is something that's really cool about being able to like kind of rewrite the UI toolkit from scratch. In general, like a lot of stuff with views is kind of monolithic. Like if you look at Vue.java, like famously is like enormous, right? Because it has to do basically the entire Vue system is in Vue.java, and then there's a few other classes that do little extra specialized things. But most of all that stuff is in like Vue.java. So in Compose, everything is kind of like pulled apart a lot more. And modifiers are a huge part of this. A lot of behavior that would typically just live in Vue.java because its default behavior now lives in a modifier that you can pull out if you don't need it or add it in if you do. And you can just kind of compose this stuff together. So part of that means that some of the complexity in text automatically kind of gets places. It's got better places to live. So, like for example, selection. All of the most of the at least of the selection code for handling like input and drawing it and stuff like that, we can just make a selection modifier that internally that we use. And the rest of the text, if you're looking at the text thing, you just see like, oh, there's a selection modifier, and then we move on to the next thing, and then you can go and look into that code. So it allows you to like really organize things really nicely. I mean, we're always cleaning things up and refactoring things and making things better. And it is very complex. And managing that is definitely like an ongoing challenge. But I think it's a lot, easier to take something really complex like that and break it apart with the way that Compose like encourages you to write code. I don't know, Halil, if you had anything to add on to that.
Well, yeah, I agree with all of the things that you said. Like, and also TextView.java is again one of the god classes that we know of, and it handles not just the text view, it also handles the edit text part. Like if you go check the edit text, there's almost nothing there. So all the editing logic is in TextView.java. And one of the things that I wanted to mention was in Compose, from the very starting point, it was about like how we can approach this from a multi-platform perspective. And if you take that into account, then all your architecture actually kind of starts to fall in place, and you see that like, oh, these parts of things they are actually common between like different platforms, like in iOS or Android or desktop. Like everything is going to go the same. Like if you have a paragraph concept, like you can see it in Flutter as well, like the cross-platform frameworks. It's gonna be the same. Like if you ask for a letter position in paragraph, it's not gonna differ from platform to platform. But when it comes to edit text kind of stuff, like the text field, then you will start having like you'll start to think about how to approach this if user doesn't have a touch screen but only has a hardware keyboard and mouse. Like how do you handle focus on that, and also how do you handle again the touch screen for Android. So putting all this together, you realize that the Compose was actually kind of designed for this. Like it's modern and it knows all these different form factors now, and it's a good thing that now we are not being forced, but we are using this multi-platform technology because we understand, like we now have to think about, hey, what should I do in common and what should I do in the platform code and how to differ those. So now we don't have TextView.java anymore. I was trying to find like a place to a link to a place in the CS Android site. Like this is TextView.java. Like I just wanted to send a package. But there are so many. Like there is a UI layer, there is foundation layer, there is Android main, there is common main, etc. So it's all scattered apart now. But this is much better, and this is much more easy to work with. Like I just not just because it's Java. Like I just don't want to go inside the text view and try to understand each line. Because like if you just look at the blame layer, you will see like there's a line from 2009 and there's a line from 2020 underneath it. So I'm surprised like someone had the guts to go there and after 11 years change that code.
It's
only the brave.
Yeah, it's funny when you go and like cut and count the rings.
Yes.
Nice.
You can see very much the layers of, oh wait, around this time they added this feature to TextView, and then like, oh, there's that commit. Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean it works, right? If it works, yes, you can say is don't touch it.
Yeah, just build it again. That's the real reason they just didn't want to touch TextView. No.
I mean, at some point, the technical depth is going to make it worth so that restarting from scratch is probably a good idea. And probably after like 10 years of Vue's framework, maybe it was actually a good idea after all, because we were running into the limitations of the Vue framework every day. And I cannot imagine how much more complicated it would have been with the Vue's framework to implement some of the things that you folks are doing for Compose.
Yeah, getting to start over from scratch can be nice, but it's also like an overwhelming amount of work sometimes. Like it's definitely interesting to learn about why some things are the way they are. The fact that like Halil said, TextView, as most of edit text is actually implemented in TextView and just exposed in a different class is really like surprising to me. I'm always like one of the most surprising things for me in text. And I'm sure there's like really good historical reasons why that kind of evolved that way. Like, whenever you're working on code that's been around forever, you just got to do what works. And so it's nice now that we can kind of split that apart for sure.
And I sent this link because I heard Siamet talk about this function before, and this function was a problem just because the number of parameters that it takes in. So
how the fuck do you even?
Yeah, more chars. I like the definitely.
It's like,
but I also like the final char CHS. Okay, sure, cool. Definitely. Whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
It's a descriptive name at least.
Yeah, also that.
I have no idea what this does.
No, Sebastiano, that's the way you have to go to save yourself out. That's it. You reach a point, you just call the function and you leave the room. That's it.
It could have been
Well, if you
named
manage to
compute, and I would have known just as much about what this does.
Nice,
If you
nice.
just read through the parameters, you will realize like this all goes in just to create a text layout. Like if you just want to write hello world on the screen, this all goes through. So I mean, there are so many things that you need to consider. And I wanted to also say, like, after joining the team, like after 2 months, I started to realize like text is just drawing stuff on canvas that has some kind of meaning for us. But other than that, it's just graphics that you are trying to do in a structured way. And that structure varies a lot. Like no one human can know everything, I think. But so at the end of the day, like you're just trying to make it work the way you know. But of course, like all the bugs that we receive, at each bug we learn something different from a different actual alphabet. All right. So I never like read Hebrew or Arabic before, but now we are trying to learn like how the diacritics work in Arabic, how the diacritics work in French. Like they're completely different. Unicode kind of tries to unify those, as its name suggests, but you cannot really do it because like there's 4,000 years of civilization that you need to take into account, like all that different text that you want to show on your screen as a pixel. Yeah.
But maybe one thing that people don't know is that the code that you have in the Java part is only the tip of the iceberg. Because as you mentioned earlier, there's also all the native stuff, including all the libraries that are used. And maybe we can just quickly cover what's harfbuzz, what's free text, all that stuff. There's a litany of like, I don't know how many gigabytes of source code contribute to showing text on screen.
I don't even want to think about that number. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting and really scary and hard, but like so the native libraries like harfbuzz, I always forget which ones do exactly what, but basically like you have to you start with like a bunch of bytes, and then you have to interpret those as like Unicode code points, and then you have to like map that to stuff, and then you have to so some of those code points, for example,
it's getting technical. Halil,
yes.
don't interrupt. Sak is getting technical. So stuff. So I'm following. Over it.
Is this like even level explanation?
Yeah. This is like explaining like I'm 5, right? That kind of stuff. So there is stuff.
I think we are going to explain it the same if we are 30 or 40. I don't think it's any different.
Oh man,
Halil, let me know if it's I'm probably even going to miss some stuff. So please, Halil, jump in if I miss something. But like,
yeah, sure.
Like in the simple case, like you have a code point, which is like maybe like a single byte in UTF-8 or 2 bytes in UTF-16, which is what Java uses because of historical reasons. Which is another fun thing. So bytes, code points, there's like not a one-to-one relationship there necessarily. And also in UTF-8, you can have multiple bytes for a single code point in certain cases. But and then with a code point, that might map to a single what we call a glyph, which is like the visual thing. So like if you have like a letter E without any like accents or diacritics or anything like that, that's like a glyph. So we call it a graphical part of glyph. So a single code point might map to a single glyph. Multiple code points might map to a single glyph. Like if you have an E with an accent, that can be expressed as like multiple code points, and then you render that as a single thing. Or like emoji is a complicated case of this, where you can have like a whole string of code points that all kind of combine, and then you have to know how the emoji standard like says to mix those together, and you end up spitting out a single emoji for that. So so that's complicated, and and then once you've got kind of the glyphs, you have to like know how big they are, and you have to take into account things like weight and the font weight and the size and all this styling stuff and the font information, and then you have to like measure how big each one of those is going to be, and then once you have the available space, you have to like also know something about like word breaking. So you have to know how the current locale defines words and where word breaks are, and then you have to like figure out how much you can fit on one line, and then how to split it, and do you use a hyphen or not, and it's like there's just a lot of stuff going on, and that all of that kind of really low level measuring stuff is basically done by the native libraries. There are higher level APIs for some of this. So this came up on the Kotlin Slack, I think it was recently, where there's actually like a Java level API for called break iterator, which lets you you can ask for a break iterator and then give it a string or like a char sequence, and you can ask for break iterators for things like words, or I'm not sure what the other ones are. I know there's one for, there you go. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of libraries.
Sorry, Mini,
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for both of you, so when are you buying the wrench and leave all the stuff behind you? Because this, I mean, the pain is, I mean, you can feel the pain. I feel every time you start talking, Halil goes like, I feel the disturbance in the force. You know, you feel it. You know, it's like, man, I just want to hug you so much right now. I was just, man, these people need hugs.
It's not that terrible. I wanted to say, like, if you think like when I first was introduced to text, someone told me that the text is a very vertical space. Like, it's not very horizontal. The learnings do not really transfer from between the layers. Like, you learn about other layers as well, but the one thing that you do in layout, it doesn't mean that it's gonna transfer. It's gonna translate into what's happening in these native layers like Minikey and Hardpass that Zach talked about, like how the code points turn into glyphs on the screen, because there's fonts, there's other considerations like how some glyphs go on top of each other, some glyphs go on the right to left, and etc. So this is all happening on the side. And a good thing about this is that you really don't have to care about what's happening on the other layers. Like, maybe on the higher layers that you are supplying your library for, but on the lower level layers like Minikey, free type, I have huge respect for those developers that work on those libraries. But as I said, like, I just know a little bit about what they do, and that's it. Like, if there's something wrong there, I'm never ever going to try to fix it. Not really.
Yeah, layering is really, and like all those nice principles, encapsulation and stuff is really helpful here. Like that break iterator, for example, is really cool because you don't have to know like how to, like, you don't have to know the current language to know how to break the characters apart or words apart. You just like say, here's the locale or whatever, give me a iterator to break words apart, and then tell me when the next word is, and all of that, and that's like the API basically. And then you don't have to know how to handle all the different locale cases and all the different complicated little bits of this. And so like there's a lot of layering. Like there's so many layers. Like if you ever watch like Alejandra's or Sean's talks about text, like there's a lot of different layers, and like we really like leverage that a lot, because yeah, otherwise it would just be like impossible to manage.
It will be too much. I mean, this stuff is brutal, and I guess it's like turtles all the way down, right? The moment you start poking at things, it never ends. At some point, there is like a piece of metal, and there's still stuff running on it.
And the metal has text on it that got there somehow. And
yeah, that probably there. It's from, I don't know, maybe it's glyphs. But I imagine like the Matrix kind of thing, right? So,
well, those were all glyphs.
Yeah, that was it, right?
You just don't know how many code points you need to render each one of those.
Yeah, I mean, do we want another question from Slido?
Yes, let's take another one. Second
I'm
one? The
taking
first
this
one?
Yes.
Hi, folks. Is there any
Yeah.
way to get the selected text when using SelectionContainer? I want a custom text toolbar, but I have no idea how to get the selected text.
I can take this one since I've done a little bit of stuff with this. So yeah, SelectionContainer is really limited. The only thing that it really lets you do right now is define kind of a container around composables, and any composables, any text composables inside of that will support like gestures for selecting text and drawing the text
Nice.
and the handles and all that stuff and the magnifier. And then it will show the little pop-up that lets you do stuff like copy, and I guess that's all you can do with not editable text. But so that's all it does. And at the moment, figuring out like we definitely want to make that API more flexible so that you can get the selected text and you can maybe control the selected text or something like that. Like there's a lot of things you can do, which you can all do with text fields. So in a text field, the selection is part of the text field state or the text field value, and also the text field state, but that's a whole other thing. And you can if you want to control the selection, you just pass in a different text range for the selection in your text field value, and you can read it back when you get the on value change callback. We don't have anything like that for the other one because and it's more complicated because when you have a text field, there's basically one block of text. When you have the selection container, you could have any number of texts inside of that. So like yes, we want to make this possible. Right now, there is no good way to do it, is the short answer, unfortunately. But it's not as it's a bit of a complicated API design question because if you have a whole bunch of different texts, or maybe what if you have an image in the middle and you want to make that selectable? How do you make an image selectable? How do you represent that in a cross-platform way? How do you represent that in the API when you're getting the selection? And how do you how do you indicate that like, okay, like 3 different text composables have selected text here. The selection starts in one of them, it covers another one, and it ends halfway through a third one. So you just like it's very complicated. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
I actually have a question about this. So maybe we can briefly explain what inline content is, because you mentioned it earlier. But my question on this, once you're done explaining that, is I've never tried using inline content with something that as a selection. How does that behave?
I believe so. The way that inline content works, maybe it's easiest to start kind of from a use case. So
yeah.
Basically, inline content is how you would potentially implement something like custom animated emojis in like a chat app. It lets you specify a bit of an annotated string that when we're drawing it, we'll replace, and measuring it, we'll replace that substring with basically a box placeholder that you can specify the size of. Yeah, basically just empty space. We just like set it aside, and then the text layout engine, like static layout, will like do all the math correctly to make sure that like it does the word breaking. It takes into account that space on that line and all that stuff. And then we leave that empty space there, and then when we're doing the layout phase, we look at all of you can put a composable in there. So and you basically define these ranges in your annotated string, and then you can assign, okay, in this range I want to put this composable content. So then and you can have a bunch of those, and that content can be whatever you want. Any composable. You can put more text in there if you wanted to. I'm not sure why you would, but like typically you would put like an image or maybe like an animation or something. So and the way that works is we set aside that space when we're doing the text measurement, and then we measure all of the inline content to fit inside of with the constraints of the placeholders that you've defined. So you have to, it's a little bit different than normal composables because you have to specify the size up front, and you don't get that through the constraints. And the reason is because the text engine needs to know how much space to set aside for to put that there. that works great for something like emojis, inline emojis where the text is all kind of, or they're all kind of a fixed size. There's more advanced use cases where you'd want to maybe have a more dynamic size, and we're talking about figuring out maybe ways to support that in the future, but don't have anything there yet. So then we reserve that space, we measure all of those composables to fit into those spaces, and then we just draw them in there in the right spots and place them in the right places in the text. So that's kind of what inline content is. And I forget what the other part of your question was. Sorry.
What happens if you have a selection? Say,
Oh, yeah.
you can have inline content in edit text, right?
Yeah. So the way that you specify like what parts where to put the content is basically just like with a text range or like an annotation. So when you're using like build annotated string, you can say like, okay, this I'm going to put some text here, but I want you to replace this text with this content. So I believe the way that it works right now is just when you if you like select some stuff and copy to the clipboard, you just get whatever that text was that was in the string that you've specified is the replacement. So for example, like if your chat app supports like putting like emoji names in between 2 colons, and so you do that, and then you say, okay, that substring with the between 2 colons, that's going to be the emoji, so I want to replace that with an image composable. If you would select it, then you would just get whatever that original text was.
Got it.
Which works for inline content because the whole API is kind of based on the idea that, well, you've already got a little bit of a string in there, you're just replacing that. It gets a lot trickier if you are looking at SelectionContainer, because a SelectionContainer can have any children in it at all. Like you don't have to have any text inside of a SelectionContainer. You can have other layouts like columns and lazy lists and text and images and whatever else. And so inside of that SelectionContainer, each of those things has to define whether or not it's selectable right now. And right now, only text is a thing that says it's selectable. But theoretically, we could support making other things selectable or allow you to define your own selectable things. But then you have to think about like, okay, cool. So now we can handle the gestures for that and figure out how to drag the handles and move everything appropriately and draw the selection. But then like, how do you represent that? Like you can have virtually any content. So like on Android, you could maybe use something like clip data, because that's kind of designed to support anything. But like that's Android specific. How do you do that on desktop or other platforms? Do we have some sort of a common multi-platform way to describe that? Is that powerful enough to describe what we want to describe? What can you do with that? Like, can you just copy it? Can you do other things? And then going the other way, how do you control that selection, given that you can have any number of nested composables inside of that? Like, basically, you like, I don't know. We haven't spent a lot of time trying to like figure out how to make this API more flexible yet, but it's something that is in the backlog for sure. It's just like there's a lot of questions there that are kind of fundamental that we have to figure out first.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, the problem itself is challenging, and the more you talk, the more it scares me. But the thing that makes me think about how no, I mean, this stuff is I mean, it's brutal. The thing that makes everything, I think, in my opinion, more complex exponentially is when you start thinking about multi-platform, right? Because at least you have like a narrow play like field, and you start working on that, and then somebody say, oh yeah, we need to run this shit on web, and I'm like, damn it.
All your assumptions go out the window.
Yeah, because I mean the domain changes. Sebastiano knows that I'm very fascinated by this kind of stuff. But when the domain changes, the boundary, the constraints, everything changes in an unpredictable kind of way, because you put yourself in a box, and then you try to figure out things, and then they change the box or add another box, or then I mean it's. I mean, I'm familiar, so I need to do the easy examples. But yeah, it's not trivial, and it doesn't look trivial, and yeah, that's. That's intense.
I want to add that, like, about the exponential factor. Like, there's also another factor that usually very much scares me, is the right to left stuff, because you figure out your problem space, you start working on it, like the selection, and selection includes lots of geometry in terms of like the gestures and where the layout finishes, where the other layout starts, and where's your like finger moving along the screen. And then you figure out all the geometry, you understand the coordinate system and etc. But then at the last second, someone tells you that, hey, have you thought about right to left? Like,
so welcome in Dubai, and you're like, I knew there was something there I was missing. I knew there was something there.
Well, it gets even more fun. Sorry, go ahead.
No, now we always think about right to left. Like, it's not that it's something we forget about, but then you realize all the things that you do, now you have to think about it symmetrical. Like, what happens, like, did I do all the calculations right when the coordinate system completely changes? Like when it starts going positive on the not on the right direction, but on the left direction. So, and then
it's a couple of billion people. So you are kind of well. Let's think about it. How many? Let's talk about user base. Okay, Halil, it's 2 billion people. Ah, damn it. I was playing the card, right? There's a ton of investment, that kind of stuff. Probably we can postpone it, or as Zach said, let's put it to the backlog. We're gonna do it later, and nope. So yeah, this thing is brutal. So respect.
And this is like
making friends in the chat. Sorry, please.
Text is one of the teams that I definitely realized and appreciated, like how diversity can actually benefit you, like in the team. Because if we have more people from diverse backgrounds, like from different cultures, because the issues that we receive are heavily like they really show that like we put into effort. Like now that we are doing this in, like, most of us use left-right languages. We do not know anything about vertical text. Like it exists in Japanese and Chinese, but now that we are getting to know those concepts, but definitely having someone in the team that is familiar with this kind of languages and that uses this language on a daily basis improves our performance, improves our backlog a lot.
Wait, what?
Domain expert.
Explain what you mean by improve the backlog. You mean expand?
No. I mean in a positive way. Like,
okay.
Not in a literal way.
Ease in the pain. That's that sense. We're gonna just outsource everything that is not left to right to this person here. Congratulations, you just won right to left. What do you mean? Welcome to the team. Just you leave the room. And they get like a gazillion notification that they got assigned the tickets, right? Like assign the ticket. Man, I love this. So yes, it's diversity. But I like the idea that, the domain expert simplifies things, right? If you don't know anything about right to left, you don't try to teach right to left to everybody. Just get some expert or somebody that is familiar with that kind of problem and domain to help the team. So I like it.
And we're also not starting completely from scratch. Like there's a lot of specifications for this. Like, for example, like a lot of this, the web has to deal with even more complex text cases. So like you can look at a lot of the W3C stuff and figure out like, okay, how have they figured out how to like design this in a reasonable way? And like how much of that can we kind of like take inspiration from and stuff. So we're not totally on our own here, luckily. Yeah.
And we are also building mainly an Android UI framework which is multi-platform. Like, and Android has been around for 13 years now, right? So maybe even more. I stopped counting. But so there are lots of learnings there as well. So whenever I have a problem in Compose trying to figure out how the text behaves in a certain situation, I just go and check the platform. Like, let's see if it's reproducible there. What have they done in the past about this problem? So usually it's already fixed. Usually they already have an idea how to approach that problem. So we take inspirations and also a little bit of code from here and there.
Inspiration, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I'm from
Borrow.
Southern Italy, so yeah, I'm completely familiar with the concept of inspiration. It was a tough environment growing up, so let's pick another question, shall we?
Yes.
What do you think?
Let's. Next
So-
one. Anonymous.
Next one.
So, are there any plans to implement an HTML parser in Compose for formatting text and links like we have in Views with things like Linkify? And I would say, are there? Please?
Anonymous.
Halil,
It's
I'll
not
let you take
me.
this one.
I swear it's
Take
not
this one.
me.
I was just going to say Zach, take this one, but plans.
Actually, this is a fun story because this is kind of actually how Halil and I met.
Oh yeah, yeah. We haven't talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we should have done that when we did the intro. Like years ago, it was maybe like 2 years ago. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I also stopped counting.
In the old times.
Yes.
Yeah, back in the day.
Somewhere in the
Back
middle
in
of
the
Long
day.
ago.
a social desert that was the pandemic. I was like playing around with Compose on a weekend or something, and I wanted
Your
to
weekend projects, man. Jesus.
I think this was maybe the first one I did with Compose, but I was curious if like what it would take to implement something like bullet lists and tables and stuff. I think actually at that point Compose actually had a table composable or table layout, which is long since gone. But and I wanted to like because SelectionContainer I think was already there, and I was like curious, like okay, well if we have these basic pieces, can we somehow build like whole complex like bullet lists and do all this fancy formatting and stuff with indents and all that stuff. So I started kind of like hacking on a little experimental library thing called Compose Rich Text, and had a few other ideas that ended up getting added onto there. But like I was just kind of playing with that, and then Halil started. I don't know. I think you just started like pinging me on Slack about it or something.
Yeah, exactly. I saw the library on Kotlin Langslang first, and I thought like at the time I was trying to write a Markdown editor in Compose. Like it was my second project on Compose. I started with a video player, and just before I started this, I saw your library, and I'm like, okay, somebody already did this. Yeah, somebody already done the heavy work. So let's see if there's a Markdown support. So yeah, that's why I pinged you.
Yeah, so I hadn't done. I don't think I had actually done the Markdown part yet, but it was basically just like a DSL kind of in Compose for doing text layouts, using the Compose layout engine, and but with the idea that you could build something like a Markdown parser on top of that, and just basically then if you have some sort of an AST, be it HTML or Markdown or whatever else, you could just like basically pass that whole AST into a composable function, run basically a very complex map operation on it, and spit out like the composables that represent that render that on the screen.
Yeah, it was my big that Markdown weaver, like let's say Markdown renderer was a weekend project for me, and at the end I started to feel like it was an interview kind of question, like the process, because I had a tree, and I was like going through the tree nodes. I was making a traversal, and then I realized it's a pre-order traversal. I'm thinking like, oh, I know these terms. I actually studied these terms some while ago. So it was basically, and one of the like clicking moments that I had about the Compose was working on that project, because it's basically just a recursive composable, just a single composable that calls itself recursively through the tree. And I think there might be even a better way to do Markdown rendering in Compose, just taking the converting the AST tree into a composable tree, and then doing the layout node speeds directly from the layout nodes. But yeah, it works for now using the rich text.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we met actually, and then when I joined Google, I handed off the project to Halil because I wanted time to work on it. So and then he was I think he made a multi-platform or something, and so so anyway, that's how we got into the whole thing. And so yeah, did you want to actually answer the question, Halil, or?
Okay. So no, I actually answering the question. I'm gonna leave that to you.
Okay. So yeah, we want to. What we're I think mostly focused on is building the right building the right building blocks so that building something like this is possible and relatively easy to do. So formatting text is we kind of can do that pretty well already. Links in particular is something that you can technically kind of build it on top of the current stuff, but it's like really complicated to do things like making them like focusable, which is something that you don't maybe think about linked right away. But like if you're keyboard tabbing around, you got to be able to focus on a link like a button. And so how do you make something inside of the text focusable? And then you have to think about like how you're going to style links. So links are like kind of a little bit complicated, but it's something that we're very aware of. This is something that we need to be able to support, and we've kind of got some ideas about how to do it. We've been talking about it pretty actively, and it's definitely in the works. In terms of like a higher level HTML parser, I'm not sure if that's something that we would like kind of build and ship as part of the actual Compose like UI text library, because like HTML is super complicated, and there's Markdown, and there's a bunch of other languages. But I think we're in a good place if it's possible to build a library on top of Compose that can do that really easily. And maybe it gets to a point where it's so clear that we need either HTML or Markdown or something that we do ship it. But I think the most important thing is that we have all the pieces there, and that if you want to slap some sort of a parser on top of something and spit out composables, it's not too hard to do. Yeah, it could be a cool accompanist library. Just looking at the chat here, someone's like, sounds like a great accompanist library. Like that could work. Touch size, yeah. Another complicated thing about links is like making sure that it fits all the recommended touch guidelines. Like what if you have a line break in the middle of a link? Like, how do you represent focus state if it is, it's a whole thing. But we want to something that we're kind of been talking about is like a way to not only do links but also do other things, like if you want to just like draw a border around some part of a text, or like if you look at some of the cool blogs and demos that Saket from Cash App has done, he does like a lot of this stuff, like animated squiggly underlines and really cool stuff there.
That was super cool.
Let me see if I can find a link to this, because he's got some really cool demos. But anyways, doing that sort of thing, you can do it right now with like a combination of getting the text layout results and doing your own measuring and drawing and stuff like that. But we want to make it a little bit easier to solve a lot of those common cases. And we've got some ideas for some APIs, how to do this. I prototyped a few ideas. We're always talking about how to improve it, and also make it performant and all the other stuff we were talking about before. So it's we're working on it.
I put the link to the library in the chat. So that should be, people take a look at that because it's really cool. Yeah, having tried to implement like linkifying entities inside of Twitter bios in Compose recently, yes to all those things that are complicated. There is a number, like a laundry list of things that I was looking at the implementation I had. I was like, it's missing focus. It's probably missing, it's missing hover cursors as well. It's missing, because it was desktop, it was missing something else too. Yeah, there's a bunch of things that are, like, you can get 80% of the way with the annotated strings today, but then it's the last 20% that is very complicated. So looking forward to that. And to the accompanist library or something. Who knows? Last question. We have just the last few minutes, so let's finish the questions, and then I know there's a lot of things that you folks wanted to also cover. You're welcome back anytime. I love anything text. So last question. how much extra complexity do variable fonts bring?
Halil, you want to take this one?
Well, I think we are not the exact experts for this because for variable fonts, Sean did all the work, and I believe like on the Compose side, they did not bring a lot of complexity because for the fonts we usually delegate a bunch of stuff to the framework. And but for the variable fonts, I'm not sure what the question meant about. Like, is it about how how varying fonts can affect other parts of text? It doesn't that much. Like, it's just when you set the font variation settings, it is just delegated to the the font resolver, and then font resolver does all the stuff that it needs to do to pass it into the static layout and all the way down to the minikin and etc. And it figures out how to lay out the text. And I believe any setting in the font variation shouldn't affect the positions of the glyphs and etc. The basic, the most fundamental layout things about the text. So, but I'm, as I said, like I am not exactly sure what kind of complexity we are talking about.
So just
yeah,
go for it.
I was gonna just say to just step back a little bit. Like, so variable fonts are this cool kind of newish font feature where you can here's a link with a I'll put it in the chat. I got a good demo. This is like an interactive demo here. So it's a cool feature where you can like control like instead of just saying a font is like bold or not bold, you can specify how bold you want it to be on like a gradient, and you can like theoretically like animate between those. Like here you can see you can like do really nice cool things. So you can define a font can define whatever it wants to be basically as variable. So like weight or something called grade is a common one, but optical size is another one. But you can define whatever you want. And I think there's been fonts where like I think there's a font somewhere on GitHub where like it's basically an animation of like a horse running or something, and it's just like it's actually it's a glyph, and then you're just changing one of the variable font axes to animate the frames. So it's a very powerful feature, and not all fonts support it. Some newer ones do, so I think this is one case where we kind of like looked a lot at like what kind of CSS was doing, the W3C standard, and when you specify these like options, basically you just do it as a string. So there's like I think it's like a 4-letter string to identify the name of the thing you want to change. It's called the axis, but it's like a property name basically, and then you pass a value for it, and whatever axis whatever value type that axis defines. So and those are just strings, and then you just like concatenate them all together into a big option string. And so then basically we just pass all that through, and then like Halil said, the lower level layers take care of actually worrying about it. So there was a lot of work done around the same time that Sean did again to like refactor how we do font loading and caching so we can support downloadable fonts, and downloadable fonts added quite a bit of complexity. But especially doing it cross-platform, which is really interesting. But I don't think variable fonts really, because a lot of that stuff just like you just pass it through and it like kind of does the right thing, I think. But yeah, Sean could definitely talk to this a lot better than we could, I think.
At some point, Sean referred to his downloadable fonts document as like it's his thesis now for PhD. Like it's like a PhD thesis because it was so long. Like when I first started, that was the first design document that I saw, and I was like, okay, I might be at the wrong place right now because there's no way I can understand all of this. Not like I couldn't understand like half of it. So, but then slowly and surely, I tried to like. I started to get some idea about like what's going on, but yeah, downloadable fonts changed a lot about how the font loading works in Compose. Like, I think it's completely different now than how it started. But and as Zach said, variable fonts are just like it's done very under the hood, like, and it's just about caring about like, what kind of API that we wanted to provide. Like it's similar to CSS, and people can easily reason about.
Yeah, that happens a lot with the text design documents. Is you're not just like, oh, here's how we build this screen. It's like, here's all of the historical context about what this thing is that nobody has heard of before, because it's a super like niche little new font feature or something, and you have to educate everybody and then explain how to actually design it. And like, it's which makes a lot of the text docs really fun to read.
You learn a lot, that's for sure. So Marcus clarified the question in the chat, which is it's with regards to what app developers need to be aware of. For example, when you might trigger remeasurement or something like that, such as when you're animating the weight of a variable font, for example.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's like kind of depends a lot on the specific axes that you're animating. For weight, because that's a common one, I think that I don't think you typically want to animate weight, because weight does change the measurement. But there's another axis called grade, which is basically just like kind of visually has the same effect as changing the weight, but it's defined as specifically not changing the measurement. So if your font has a grade axis, then you animate that. And I think some of these demos, I think the demo that we had up there before actually had one of these where you can see if you change the weight, it'll change how much space it takes. And if you change the grade, it takes the same amount of space, but it just looks thicker somehow and darker. So like, it's interesting because like font design is a whole other thing, because like there's a whole art, like literally a whole art, and there's like design firms that do this and stuff, and how to make characters look, or how to make the glyphs look right at different font sizes and in different types of screens and stuff is really hard, and goes from everything from like how the actual rendering math works to just how the lines are designed, and making that work on a scale that can be like a, any number between 0 and 1 is, I don't even know how they approach that when they're designing these things, but like they figure out a way to like be able to do some of these tricks. So like you can, for example, change the grade without changing the font size. So for that specific one, I think you generally want to animate grade, not weight. But like if you've got other things, like it all depends on what the actual font does.
And I think just throwing it out there, because probably I'm naive, but the only way to know is look at the recomposition counter in Android Studio, right? I mean, I will be empirically trying out things, and hopefully you are picking the right modifier or the right value that it doesn't recompose 300 times in a second.
Yeah, and I think we're always building. I think like there's been some work in Android Studio to build some tooling to help with this, and I'm sure that we'll be improving it kind of indefinitely. But in this particular case, it's not even just about recomposition, because I think you probably end up having to recompose to pass in the new parameters. What you want to avoid here potentially is doing the layout pass again, which is harder to figure out, because like it's internal to the text composable. So like if you're writing app code, it's harder to look at and figure out how much the actual text thing is doing the layout itself. I mean, you could put breakpoints in there and do it, but yeah, and that's a lot of that sort of thing is where we try to be as smart as we can about it, and do kind of our own, go beyond what Compose gives you in terms of invalidation and state tracking, and do some of our own calculations. And I think Halil has worked on some of this to like figure out, like when he was talking about metric affecting versus non-metric affecting styles, figuring out what we can do to change as little as possible every time we get new information.
Yeah, and I sent a link that has the code for like how the logic for how we check if we can reuse the text layout again and again. Like it just it's an extension on text layout result, and it asks like, I am given these new parameters probably, and can I reuse this text layout result again? So if this function returns true, we assume that nothing has changed about the text layout, and then we can continue. Even if there's a recomposition, like we can easily skip this part. And then this is one of the heaviest things that we do in the text layout text pipeline. So for example, if you are just changing color in your text style, this is probably going to be passed because as you can see, there's layout input.style can reuse layout, another extension on text style, because some parts of text style are metric affecting, some parts are not. And this is one of the optimizations that Text Composable does under the hood.
So I don't think we do any of this for variable font axes right now. I mean, maybe it's something we could look into. I don't know if that's even feasible, but I mean, probably. Worth filing a feature request, I guess. Yeah.
Ooh, we got to that point.
Yes, so we're gonna please people in the chat. You can clip this moment from the episode, and you can attach it to the onto the issue trigger. I was like,
your word, not mine.
That's how we roll here. You know, we don't do. Oh, can you provide a repro repository? No. We just link the video. That's it. So I have it on paper.
I was worried we might run out of things to do in 10 or 20 years, so I'm trying to make sure we don't run into that situation.
Yeah, you have to improve the backlog, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think we should wrap it up because we're already 11 minutes over. I mean, I could stay here and talk text the rest of the evening, but I guess folks have other stuff to do as well. So let's adjourn. And hopefully we'll get you back at some point, maybe when you have some new features to launch in, Compose 1 point whatever. I don't even know. We cannot talk about anything future, so who knows what comes after 1.3.
I could also spend the rest of the day talking about this, so I would absolutely love to come back. Thanks for having us, though. It's so much.
For having us.
Thank you very much for coming. It was lovely, at least for me, because I love this topic. But it was super, super interesting.
Maybe next time we can actually write some code too.
Yeah, I mean, so next time we get to the bug reports.
There we go. Yeah, we'll implement the axis tracking thing that we talked about.
Yes.
So I actually had a gift. Like I wanted to, if there was a time, I wanted to talk about like this auto-size text that I got to do in the like internal hackathon that we did. It was about like just log querying text measure if it is doing everything that we want it to do. And this is just like creating your own basic text with text measure, like how you can do it, and also how you can introduce auto-size that is similar to what's in platform and support library. Like we do auto-size through mean and max size with granularity in between. And this is just like, again, this is a binary search code that goes through the possible font sizes and finds the correct font size to display. Yeah.
What I hear here is that applying for the text theme on Android might actually be the only case where the stuff you interview about makes sense to know.
It's paying off. It's paying off. That was the whole game. At some point, it was like, okay, I bought the book, I got the job, I want to use this stuff. Which team do I need to pick? Okay. Crazy people doing this kind of stuff. Text team. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like almost all of those concepts are somewhat related to strings, right? Like most interview questions that I saw that I like practiced with are in the end like you can apply those concepts to strings, or like even the tree traversals and etc. Just we talked about. That's a good thing. Like that you see like okay, it didn't all that go to waste. So I'm kind of using it. Like at some point I tried to use interval trees and etc. Like I was so excited. Like okay. Time is now.
This was fun. Thanks again.
Thank you very much again. Ivan, do you want to do the wrap up? And then I'll say when the next stream is.
Yeah, when is the next stream?
Yeah, you do the event thing, and then I'll do the date thing because I have to look it up.
Yeah. So I want to try again my toy. So if you're watching this on YouTube, I mean this thing I love it. Subscribe to the channel and like the videos. Thank you for the support. If you have an Amazon Prime subscription, think about subscribing to our channel. You can do it for free if you link your Twitch account and your Amazon account. We have the T-shirt on the store. Stickers are on the store. So plenty of ways to support us. And thank you. We're gonna be at DroidCon London in a couple of weeks. We are still running the offer. You can save some money with us. Check the code on Twitter, on our past tweets. We can even
I'm
try
gonna get
again
it. I'm gonna put it in
Yeah.
the chat right now.
So if you want free stickers, you can buy a ticket for DroidCon London, and then you get stickers at the conference because we are gonna be there. And yeah, so thank you for being with us. It was a lot of stuff and a lot of inside knowledge. So I love it. So thank you guys.
So the next stream is the 2nd of November. And as I might have mentioned earlier, we're going to have someone you probably have heard of before, Roman Guy, and it's going to be talking about shaders. So that's going to be a stream that I'm very much looking forward to. And I'm going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Roman, but it looks cool.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
That's every conversation I have with him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. No. I believe you because
Yes,
we
but
had
no.
the pleasure to having him over, and I mean, I'm still have PTSD for that shit. So no. You know when you know when you understand, you figure out at some point that you are basically at the kids table, at a party, and that's your I was at the kids table the whole time, and he was like, yeah, that's how it works. And I was like, I'm gonna just save something on that. Let's tweet something. Yeah, stickers, and things. Yeah, that was me. That was totally me. I was like, I don't know how I can pay bills, but but the industry also needs people like me. So that's the only thing that I can think about. Well,
I feel the same way all the time. I'm like, I don't know. Just reading the code and figuring it out step by step.
I was just telling someone this today. It's like, if you are in our line of work and you are the smartest person in the room, that's boring.
yeah,
so
you're in the wrong room.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up. We are going to do the thumbnail now. I don't know if Zach and Halil are going to stick around, but I will definitely be. So if you're on the Discord, just keep an eye out for the link in a minute or two. And with that, I think we're done for today. Thanks again, folks, for coming. And I hope to see you in real life at some point soon. Bye, everyone.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.